Kansas at that time, moved to Kansas City in 2012. Beginning of 2013. And real estate was still in the back of my mind. So when I got here, I started buying single family homes and got to about 10 single family and 1 duplex. 2018-19 came around and I was like, I need to kind of up my game a little bit. So I ran into an insurance client, friend of mine, and he had a 16 unit and a 12 unit. Then a month later, he's like, hey, I need a quote on a 44 unit. Literally 2 weeks later, he's like, I need a quote on a 64 unit. I was like, dude, I know you're not making that much money to be buying these on your own. So what are you doing? He told me syndications. And I was like, oh, I want to learn about this. So I was like, let's talk more. Let's have some coffee. So he told me about a mastermind group. I joined that mastermind group, and then I joined another one after that because he told me about the mastermind group I was in. His brother opened up his own mastermind, so I joined that one. That one pushed me a little bit more because I was just still like hesitant. I was like, where am I going to get the cash from? How am I going to buy this 40 unit property? So in short, 21 rolls around and this 22 unit deal comes from my mastermind group. I meet up with about 4 or 5 people that are in the local Kansas City metro area, and then I find one guy. I was like, hey, I could work with this guy. So I was like, hey, the mentor has been yelling at me that I need to sign a contract on some type of deal. So this 22 unit deal looks good. So we go ahead and sign the EMD, or sign the contract with the EMD, and I'm like, I just put $50,000 with EMD. What the hell am I doing, right? Very conservative underwriting. I was like, okay, start reaching out to friends and family. I was like, hey, all you gotta do is put $9,000 in this deal. We're gonna give you guys 5% cash on cash return. So I hope you guys understand when I'm saying cash on cash. 5%, my partner's like, that's too low. I don't want to overpromise because if we don't hit it, we're gonna be screwed because I got my uncle and my brother-in-law yelling at me like, hey, you promised us 10% return. Where's that at? So I started learning more about the multifamily side and the underwriting. So I'm like looking at this and then I'm looking at the market. And like what I was talking to Daniel about was, oh, this guy's getting 650 rents. I think I could push 1,200, 1,300. And my partner's like, Amit, calm down. This is your first deal. I was like, no, I'm serious. I'm like thinking about hospitality. Like if I do a CapEx here where it makes the unit look so nice that it feels home to the tenant, I think I could achieve these rents. And he's like, if you do it, I'll buy you steak. I was like, all right, cool. So the first unit we renovate, I'm hesitant. It's a 1 bedroom, 1 bath. And he's like, don't list it at 1,100. I was like, no, let me just list it on Facebook, Marketplace, see if I can get it. Single lady comes in with 2 kids and she's like, oh, I love this. You did subway tiles. You painted the cabinets sage green and you got the wood flooring, you got, chair height toilet. I was like, oh, really? You care about the toilet? She's like, yeah, I care about the toilet. I was like, all right, cool. The vanity lights, all modern, right? And KCK is a rough area of KC. So she, on the spot, she's like, what do I do? I was like, I need a $800 deposit. She's like, all right, here you go, boom. So I called my partner, I'm like, lease? He's like, really? I was like, yeah, 1,100. He's like, no way. I was like, yeah. So he's like, what are we doing next? I was like, I'm kicking everybody out now. So I go back and I raise rents on everybody, $150 right off the bat. I get 4 or 5 people that leave. So I was like, all right, I'm going to renovate these real quick. So what I learned is if you could keep the unit turns down to the minimum. So having a construction background, I was able to keep our costs low to where we're renovating the units for about $7,000 to $8,000. I started talking to other people that were doing syndications in the community. They're paying $15,000, $20,000 for these renovations, right? So I was like, oh, sweet, I'm doing a better job and keeping the cost down. So our 2 bedroom, 1 bath, I rented for $1,250. And then I was like, okay, now I need to get $1,300 on those. So then I started getting $1,300 and started pushing that. So I took the rent roll from $8,900 a month to $23,000 over 4 or 5 months of taking over the property. And my partner was like, refi. I was like, yeah. And then, what happened in the good old economy, the rates went up. So we decided, let's just keep the cash flow coming. We're sitting good where we're at. Partners are happy. Everybody's getting, 9, 10% returns right now, year over year. So better than the CDs, really savings accounts that you have with 4%. That was one of our deals. And while we're doing that one, he came up to me. He's like, hey, I found this deal in Platte City. I was like, okay. I raised, $600,000 here. We could do another one. It's 212 units. I was like, oh shit. How much are we buying this for? So it's in the, $20-some million. I was like, oh crap. So how much do we need for that? It's like $8.5 million raised. I was like, crap, dude, I'm gonna die. Hence how I have more white hair now. December of last year is when we closed on December 22nd. Some of you guys in the room were talking about it. I had one LP that came in last minute, like the day of closing with $700,000. I can't tell you how much weight was lifted off my shoulders when I found out that this guy came in and just dropped a check for $700,000. I was like, holy crap, I can't believe this happened. And I was telling my partner, I was like, my sugar levels are up. The doctor told me I need to get on metformin, blood pressure medicine, cholesterol meds, excessive drinking. So I gave up drinking last year. This year has been really good for me as well. We closed on 3 deals. I underwrote 80 of them. So kind of like, going back into the wholesaling stuff, right? You got to stick to your price. Yeah. You don't want to overpay. I let go of a deal over $50,000. I literally told the seller, I was like, I'm not paying $50,000 on a $4.2 million purchase price. Like I want it at 4.15. That's it. I'm not buying this for 4.2. And I stuck to it. I didn't do the deal. I walked away. And somebody else bought it. I was like, that's fine. They could overpay for something that I'm not comfortable with. Yeah, 22 unit deal. I always think about it always because there's always good and then there's the bad, right? So always look at your underwriting. Be conservative. You don't need to overpromise your LPs or your other partners in the deal.
What's an LP?
LP is a limited partner, so kind of like what I was talking to some of you guys before I started speaking up here was you got your doctors, lawyers, they're already working 12-hour shifts. They don't have time to go buy a single family home and manage it or buy a multifamily product and manage it. So they're looking for syndicators. So hence you see all these syndication groups out in the US. Kansas City, I know of about 5 or 6 of them that are local. What they do is they're the operators. They go and do the day-to-day. If they have a third-party manager, they're watching over them, making sure that they're hitting the returns for these guys that are working so hard that they need to park their money somewhere else and grow financially free as well, right? At the same time, it's helping you as well, but I tell everybody syndications are not to get rich. It's a long-term process, 3 to 5 years minimum, before as a syndicator you see any money. So I'm still living off of ramen noodles. I tell everybody that. JV deals are always good too. So once you get into the syndication world is how you can figure out how to do JV deals, because some of those LPs are wanting to be an active partner, even though they don't understand the whole tax benefits of being an active partner. You can't be an active partner if you're not in real estate, but they want to be an active partner, so that's where you make the income for yourself by doing a JV deal, because you can put in the minimum, but then they come in and fund the rest of it, but you're getting the split of the profits equally instead of 30%, 70%. Most of you guys were asking me about syndications on like how do you get in. 3 major ones that I tell everybody about. One's operations. So if you could operate, that's one way you could get into syndications. Another one is accounting, investor relations, and then the biggest one is capital raise. You know how to raise capital. You have a network of people that are wealthy and that are looking to put funds somewhere. That's a good way. Or if financial planners, they have clients that are always looking to put money into. Those are the 3 big ones. Before I start talking, I was going to tell you guys, I am more of a Q&A guy. So if you guys have any questions, just raise your hand, and happy to kind of dive deeper into that stuff. Like I said, the 22 units was one of my biggest ones. I talked to Daniel about that, and that's what I think got him intrigued. And I wish I could find another deal like that. Interest rates are not helping right now.
What's in that joint venture? You said there's a tax benefit for them, but about active real estate agent?
Yeah, so the LP, like a normal, like a doctor, for instance, if they come into a JV deal, they think that with the active K1, they're going to get tax benefits, that's depreciation and all that, but it really is just for that property. They're thinking it's going to offset their W-2 income, which is not. I have a lot of friends that are doctors that I did 2 JV deals. Out of the 3 I did this year, 2 of them, they were doctors out of California. And they're like, oh, my CPA told me I don't get any benefits from it. I'm telling you, but you just wanted that active check mark on the K1. So here we are, we're in a JV deal together, just the 3 of them.
But he does get the benefit off of whatever
just that property alone. So
the capital
yeah,
he puts
so the
depreciation.
the capital that he puts in, then you get the depreciation. So this year it was 80%. So we're going to do a cost segregation study. And that's what most of these guys that are coming in as LPs, that's what they're looking for, is that cost segregation study and getting that depreciation from that property. So they put in $100,000. Let's say we do a cost segregation and it equals out to a minus $60,000 K1 per
What is the cost segregation?
Cost segregation is where you get this guy that's licensed to come in and just say your property is worth this much, and then they depreciate all the pictures, the building, and everything. So always don't just go to one, get a quote from 4 or 5 cost segregators, because you'll see a big difference. Just on our 212 unit deal, I had one guy that quoted us, he was only able to get us about 40% on our initial investment. And then another guy was able to get us 65. And then the third guy was about, I think, around 50. But we went with the 65%, even though he was charging more, because we knew that was going to benefit at the end of the day on a $20 million project to be able to, depreciate 65% of that. So
Take it as a loss.
Yep, take it as a loss. So
Yeah.
my taxes look a little bit better this year when I paid them. So
So there is an incentive for the doctor to put cash into your deals.
into the deals, yeah.
Because he can
Yeah.
write off.
Yeah.
Or say, I didn't make this much.
Yeah, it's just they can't offset it off their W-2 income. See, like for most of us here in the room, we're real estate professionals. So we can take our real estate commissions and all that and then deduct it all off of our main income, where they can't do that. Their W-2 is still going to get taxed at the end of the day. But these investments into real estate help them offset that, because they're taking that income and saying that I invest, and then on that $100,000 investment, I'm only paying taxes on $40,000 compared to the whole $100,000.
How did you, build up to the point where you got into that first deal? What did you do before that? The construction background and all that.
So when I had my 10 houses, I bought them more as fix and flip, and I could never flip. I just ended up holding them. I like the cash flow. So I ended up with 10 single family homes, and as I was doing, I always had a construction in my background from hotel days. We actually built 2 hotels too with my dad. So I was like, when I got to Kansas City, I was like, I'm just going to open up my own construction company. So as I was doing my flips, I started hiring the trades and keeping them in-house. And then COVID hit, and I went back to where construction was just for me instead of doing it for other people as well. And that benefited me on the multifamily side. That's what I was talking about, like my cost to turn a unit is 7,000 to 8,000 compared to the 15-20. Just because I know the labor and there's no profit for a GC in there, right? So usually when you hire a GC, they take 20 to 30% as their profit as well on top of it. And they're just buying materials. You just go to Lowe's and they're like, okay, we're just gonna buy this off the shelf. Where I'm sitting there at the pro desk, you know, asking for every single discount I can get. Every time I walk into the Shawnee Lowe's, you know, the store manager runs the other way. He's like, I'm not giving this guy a discount. With the multifamily too, like you'll notice, like when you're turning units, if you buy in bulk, it helps. If you know you're going to do a renovation of, let's say on the 22 unit property that we had, we knew we were going to renovate at least 50% of them. If I find a deal somewhere, I try to buy it. I bought vanity lights that were like $75 a piece, and I told them, I was like, I'll buy the whole pallet. You discount it. The store manager agreed to $25 plus tax. Like, sweet, let's go. And then you just got to find a place to store it. And so I have a lot of storage units. I need to start investing in storage unit complexes
yeah,
too.
offset your costs.
But multifamily intrigued me because, like, when I had the 10 single family homes, I was running all over the place. Maintenance issues, or there's a vacant, you know, one house is vacant. Now I got to worry about getting that filled, because if I don't get filled by the first of the month, I got a mortgage to pay on. For multifamily, 22 units, if I even had 4 vacant, I'm not worried because I got the other 18 tenants paying my mortgage and the other operational costs. So when you're underwriting these deals, you want to find out what your break even. For us on the 22 units, it was 50% off. We dropped down to 50% occupancy. That means the property is going to maintain itself. I'm just not going to get any cash.
Can you tell us about your process of finding a mastermind group and then joining the other one, and how that's
So I always say networking. You know, that insurance client of mine, you know, I reached out to him. I was like, hey, how are you doing this? And then he's like, mastermind. So I was like, oh, I want to know more. So I took him out, bought him a $7 coffee, and then met with him like 2-3 times in fine. Met with the guy that was the mentor for the master. Did a one-on-one with him like 2-3 times. And then, you know, it's always the cost, right? We're like, do I want to put this 12,000 here or 24,000 here? And what's the benefit of it? So when I joined the first match, like 25,000 to join for the year, I was like, I'm putting this 25 grand in, and being in the business mindset, I was like, if I put this 25 in, I need to make 100. How am I going to make 100 from joining this group? So I vetted them, and then I found out it's networking. So you join the mastermind, you do learn during the process, but it's networking with other members in the group itself and seeing what you can learn off of them, or you partner with them. So the partner that I met with and that I bought the 212 unit with, I met him from that mastermind group. So my $25,000 was well worth it at that point.
Was he like a good, what was his strength he brought? You said the syndicator has like 3 different strengths.
Yeah, so
was he a fundraiser? Or
he's a very good operator and a negotiator, I'll tell you that. So the 212 unit deal, we signed the contract at 20.2 million. The day we closed, our in cost was 18.6 million. During inspections, he negotiated. Appraisal, he negotiated. And then when we got our term sheet, he negotiated. Even though we had a freaking badass rate, 5.39%, he went to the seller and said, we can't do this deal. The rate's too high. So she dropped another $550,000 off the purchase price right off the back, so, because she knew she was so far into it, she can't back out now.
So was this not, it wasn't his first deal then, right?
No. He's at close to 800 doors, and me and him, so I'm at about 720, 730. Hopefully I get to 800 by the end of next month. He was an LP about 15 years ago in like 4 or 5 deals. And then he became a KP, which KP means you get to sign on the loan, but you don't get any equity. You're just guaranteeing the loan with the other GPs, and you get no equity out of it. But what you're doing is you're building your credibility with the lenders. They see that, oh, you've signed on these loans before, so we'll go and do a loan for you on the next deal. That's another portion of the syndication too. You could come in as, if you have a really good credit and you know your net worth is not the best, but you got something to show on the net worth side. You can come in and just sign on a loan for like a $2 million loan or $1 million loan and build your credibility with the lender. So next time you go to a bank to buy your own property, you say, hey, I'm a guarantor on this property right here. And then they look at that cash flow and they're like, okay, you're doing good over there, even though you don't own any equity, because as a KP, you're still putting your money in yourself as an LP. So like he told me the first KP deal he did was in Texas.
What does KP stand for?
KP is just, so you're sponsoring on the loan, so guarantor.
But you're not getting the
GP equity. Yeah.
You're not getting the promote with the GP.
Yeah, so like usually it's like a 30-70 split, right? So the 30% is split between all the GPs in the deal. So like our team consists of 6 guys. So we usually take that 30% divided amongst the 6 of us, according to what we do. Capital raising is usually the biggest bucket because it's the hardest thing to do is raise money. So out of the 30%, it's going to sound weird, but out of the 30%, 35% is allocated just for capital raising. So if you came in and raised all the capital for that deal, you'd get that 35% of the 30% just for yourself, without even putting a dollar in, just by
The
raising money.
GP is getting 30% of the equity
Of
in the deal.
Yeah, of the whole project, yeah.
After they hit the performance.
No, that's just from day
We're
one,
putting it together.
for putting it together.
But
And there's different scenarios. So you could do like, they call it the waterfall. So on the waterfall, you don't get it, the GP doesn't get anything until they hit that.
But are they putting any of their own equity into the?
Yeah, so for instance, like for me, like even on the 212 unit deal, we call it the skin in the game, right? So the lender wants to see something from you as well. So I literally put in my life savings in that one. So
But your LPs are putting in a lot of money.
a lot of money too, yeah. But you know, like for instance, like on the 212 unit deal, our minimum investment was 75,000. So you could come in with just 75,000. I had one guy that wrote a check for 700,000. So our average was about 100,000 for that deal. We had 76 investors on that one. We've done another deal where we actually created a private fund for people. So like it was a 50,000 minimum, but we created a private fund and we're raising 10,000 per investor. And then that fund invested into the main project. So you don't have to have loads of cash to become an LP. At the end of the day, you can always find these private funds too. So I have an ongoing one that I do every year. I started, we take the private fund and invest into multiple projects instead of just one project. And then our average cash on cash return ends up being around 6%.
Are your investors spread out? You said you had some in California, but are they generally just spread out?
Oh yeah, I go
Your LPs.
LPs. I have one, actually quite a bit on the East Coast, Florida, North Carolina, South Carolina. One from New York, and then up north, I think it gets as far as Nebraska. Well, actually Minnesota too. I forgot about him. And then down south, I got a bunch in Texas. So for me, it kind of works out a little bit better because when I was in the hospitality industry, I networked with like a lot of hotel owners around the country when I went to conferences and stuff. So they're trying to diversify their risk as well, right? So that's why I said Texas, North Carolina. I have a lot of hotel owners that invest into the multifamily stuff too. They have a hard time investing because they're not used to just passively investing. So that's been a big struggle for me in the last 2 years to try to convince them why it's better. I told them you're sleeping and still making money. That's what I try to tell them. So instead of running a hotel 24/7.
So how do you manage like distributions and investor relations, like setting expectations with investors?
So our rule is we send out monthly updates with financials. Financials usually get in by the 10th or the 15th of the month, and then we try to send out a newsletter, just letting everybody know what's going on at the property, good and the bad. If occupancy is down, we let them know about that. Like 212 unit, we're actually firing our third-party manager and self-managing.
Okay.
Don't want to do that long term, but we just thought it was a better option to do instead of having a third-party manager manage it. We do use a CRM software, Syndication Pro. So that manages the distributions for you as well. So it's very plug and play. You just put in how much you're going to distribute, and it'll automatically allocate it according to what they funded into.
Is it like quarterly? Are you guys doing
We do it quarterly. We wait after a purchase. We wait 6 months, and then after that, it's quarterly. Yeah, 6 months is just to get it stabilized because there's a lot of stuff during transition.
Sure.
Oh, go ahead.
How do you, I mean, and feel free to not answer this, how do you guys, do you use a formula for like cash reserves? So like, what's your formula?
So with the mastermind group, the second one I joined, there was a guy that was in the finance world, had a W-2 job, and he got out of it. He literally spent 10 days locked in his apartment and created this underwriting tool that actually calculates everything for you. So according to the property, once you put the CapEx in, over 5 years, it'll automatically tell you how much you need to build up in cash reserves by year 5 to have enough to get the property ready to sell. So that's another issue too, right? So when you're exiting the project, you gotta figure out how are you gonna present this to the seller or the buyer, I mean, at the end of the day, right? So like when we bought the 212 unit, the pool wasn't working. We didn't know because what they did was they filled up the pool and they would go there every day and fill the pool. And every time we came out, they were like, oh, nice, this is the pool. So anybody that follows me on Facebook, the new pickleball court I have, that's where the swimming pool was. So I was like, instead of spending $150,000 fixing the pool, I'll just fill it in for $50,000 and put a pickleball court. So.
Pickleball is in.
Yeah.
That's the thing.
So, you know, and it's funny because after I did all that, we had our open house literally last week. And while we're doing that, maintenance guy that we inherited by buying the property, he's like, oh man, I've been trying to tell you guys, this pool has been leaking for like 10, 15 years. Nobody ever used it. Now the pickleball court's here, and then everybody's just like, you didn't mind telling me this? Like the 20 times I came here before I bought this place? But you know, it's like you live and learn, right? Every deal is different. So after that, the deal I was looking at, I was like trying to do my homework. I even went to the neighbor next door. I was like, notice anything different about this property? Like, is there tenants that are rough? You know, what's going on? Do your homework. That's all I can say is any property you buy, you gotta look at the bones. So you never know what you're gonna walk into after closing.
Oh yeah, it works great. Everything's great.
I had a friend that bought a property out in Cleveland. It was a 46 unit, And when they toured it, the guy kept saying, oh, they're occupied and the tenants won't let us in those units. Found out 7 units were just trashed. They were gutted, never renovated, nothing. So, and he never calculated the expense for that. So now he has to go back to the bank and say, hey, I need more money for these 7 units to get them up and running. So,
What's the maximum you want to invest in rehabbing a unit?
so if you don't have a contractor, the max is probably about 15 to 20, but same thing, it comes back to the ROI, right? Like, so if you're gonna spend 15,000, how much of a rent bump are you gonna get? If you're only getting a $100 rent bump,
Yeah.
it might not be worth spending the $15 to $20,000 on that unit. You might wanna do it. So there's a classic turn and then there's the modern turn. So after that, I even revised it again now. So I do 3K, 5K, and 7K. Those are my turns.
Try to keep within.
So 3K is like just going in there painting
Yeah.
and then, getting out, changing some light fixtures or whatever. 5K turn is changing out the flooring, painting, and then getting out. 7K is where
a good
we're just gutting and redoing the bathrooms, everything, so. But main thing is the ROI. You want to make sure that whatever you're spending, you're going to achieve it. So for me, if I do a 7K turn, I want to get at least a $300 rent bump per month.
It's pretty healthy.
Yep. Especially with the way the economy is going right now. So $300 is worth it. 2 of my properties, we've stopped doing CapEx because of that reason, because we just noticed that after putting the 7,000 in, we're only getting $100 rent bump at that property. So I was like, hey, let's just, hold off. If we're achieving the target rents and not having to do 7,000, let's just keep it the way it is and just bump them up $100. Maybe not spend even the 3,000 on them. So.
You find it easier to rent out when you do invest a 7 or 8?
Oh yeah. I see it. So I call it the Indian mentality.
Yeah.
I see that if I put a new product in, it's going to rent, and I don't care if it cash flows or not. It's just something nice to look at.
Right.
But my partner, he's more of on the conservative side. He's like, hey, we're not profiting from this, so we're going to stop. I was like, all right, cool. Like I said, I go into Lowe's, I'm starting to look at like the nice, porcelain tiles. I'm like, hey, can we put this in the bathroom? And he's like, no, we're just going to put the LVT. I still have that single family mindset because from doing the fix and flips. So like, my flip that I did, the 3 properties I own in KCK, if you go and walk into the bathrooms there, you're like, this is like Johnson County. Like, it's all bougie, too much for the KCK market, right? But, hey, all my tenants love it, so. I think even one of them, I have the rainfall shower. My tenant was like, what the hell is this?
Imagine.
Man, dude, when can I get up to the room? I don't even have one.
The more you invest, I'm guessing, the more comfortable they feel there as well, right?
Yeah.
Which in return, they'll stay longer.
Stay longer, because it's like a mindset it's got to feel like home to them, right? So if it doesn't feel like home, it's just another place that they're staying, and then next year they're gone to something else. So
You have a lot of connections, but how do you advertise to raise money and find investors?
yeah, so going back to the mastermind group. So in my mastermind group, I just joined another one yesterday, and that one focuses just on capital raising. So everybody that's in that mastermind, all they do is capital raise. So I was trying to bounce back ideas with them. So I met with like 3 people literally within the 24 hours. And one of them told me, quit going to real estate events. And I was like, why? He's like, they're not writing you the checks. The people that are writing you the checks are the doctors and the attorneys. So you got to go to their conferences. And I was like, oh, that makes sense. So my goal for next year is now I'm going to end the KCMBA, which is the Kansas City Bar Association, just because I was like, okay, there's a bunch of lawyers that don't know what to do with their money. They're going to blow it away by drinking and doing drugs or something. So I was like, I'm going to go talk them into investing in real estate.
So you can attend those without actually being an MD or a lawyer?
So most of the big conferences, they don't care. Just being in the hotel industry, I knew like when I used to go to the hotel conferences, I would see people there that would be just getting a booth and they'll be doing something random. Like, this doesn't even have to do with the hotel industry. So that kind of bounced back into my head, and I was like, I'm going to try to do that next year. I'm going to try to go to these medical conferences and just call them up and be like, hey, if I paid $900 or $1,200 for the booth, can I come and advertise my product, which is syndicating on multifamily? And if they say yes, then I'll show up at those. If not, then I'll just attend them, hang out in the lobby area, and then kind of try to just network with everybody I can. Invite them to dinner or coffee. I know one guy that does it. He's a doctor already, so he kind of has that in with the medical, but he's been going to IT conferences. So I was talking to him this morning, and he was in Vegas for some retail conference. I was like, what are you doing at a retail conference? He's like, there are a lot of people here that own 30, 40 franchises, and that's all they know about. They don't know about the other side of the real estate. They're buying these, like McDonald's. Like, he met with one guy that owned like 10 McDonald's franchises, but he didn't know that he could buy a building and make money, more money doing that instead of owning paying McDonald's for the real estate, right?
Right, right.
Oh, yeah, McDonald's is in real estate.
Real estate, yep.
That's pretty slick.
You guys as GPs, do you guys just assume that you're not gonna make any money until you guys refinance or exit out of the investors, or do you guys just not take that money as like income or?
No, so our group, we do a straight split, so whatever, like if the profit is 100,000, it's split 30-70. We don't do any of the pref waterfall stuff because a lot of the investors, when they start seeing that 50-50 split, they're like, why are you getting 50%? Where if we keep it 30-70, they like that more because they know they're getting 70% of the profits. But as a syndicator, you really don't make your money until you finish the full cycle, which is when you exit, right? So when you exit is where all the investors look at that too. It's called the equity multiplier. They're looking at that 1.8 times or 2.1 times equity multiplier. What that tells them is that they're doubling their money. Same thing for us because that 30% is doubling in value as well. So even though we only put in on the as an LP, if I put in like 100,000 into the 200 unit deal, for instance, I still have that 4 or 5% that I have on the GP side that's going to double in value as well after 5 years. So like I think I was talking about that earlier, like eat ramen noodles for 3 to 5 years until you finish the cycle. Like my partner, he's done quite a bit of those already, so he's already benefiting from. Like last year, I kept asking him, where are you getting all this money to write checks from? And so all the stuff I was in LPs in, 5-10 years ago, they're all starting to sell now. So all those checks are coming in, I need to dump it somewhere. So I was like, oh, that makes sense, because like 212 unit, he put in $500,000. I was like, where the hell did you get this $500,000 check from? Like, oh, the property we just sold in Arizona. I was like, oh, okay. Yeah, if you're doing syndications, 5 years before you see money.
Yeah. For like going to the conferences for like doctors or lawyers, how do you like if you have little to no like physical things to like show for you, how do you get the confidence to start getting backers?
Yeah, so for me, like when I did the 22 units, I went to friends and family for the 22 units, and then after that, I did the 212 unit right off the back, and that's where that kind of broke the glass ceiling for me, where I was like, I need to go out and network with new people, right? So that 22 unit deal kind of helped me because I would go to new people and say, hey, I did this 22 unit deal and this is the returns I got. This 212 unit deal that I have coming up, this is what it's going to do. So would you like to learn more about it? We can do a one-on-one, do coffee, dinner, whatever you need to do to kind of get me to get to you, sit down without no other distractions, and you just focus on this property and invest it. Because they're looking at you when they're investing. They're not looking at the property itself always either. They're wanting to make sure that you're honest, you're not going to screw them over, and then they look at the profits. So, because at the end of the day, what I always tell them is, we're signing the loan. You as an LP, you're writing your $50,000 check. That's the worst you're going to lose. For me, like I still don't sleep at night sometimes on the 212 units because that's a $14 million loan that I signed on. And
But is that non-recourse?
So with the life insurance company, they say non-recourse, but I've learned from other case studies when people go under, they will come after your personal assets too. And that's the reason why they ask for your personal financial statement at the end of the day and find out what real estate you already own. They won't come after your home, but they'll come after any other LLC or business that you have to try to collect. So.
At what point in multifamily does it become where you don't have to personally guarantee a loan? Because that could be like an A-class property.
No, so like the 212 unit, that was a B-class property. And like you were saying, it's a non-recourse. But I mean, personal guarantee kind of like, when you go with a smaller bank, they always make you sign a personal guarantee. Like the 3 deals I did this year, it's a personal guarantee. But even the non-recourse, like I was saying before, if they don't pull all that 14 million out of that 212 units, if it goes under, let's say they have 2 million left over in Delta, they're going to still come after the partners and say, hey, you owe this money.
And
So at the end of the day, you can't run away from it. But
I've heard that they've started adding some arbitration agreements that
Yeah.
you need to really research.
yeah. So when you get those term sheets, don't just look at the interest rate and get excited. You gotta read the other 20 pages that they put in there, especially the life insurance companies. Theirs looks like a full PSA contract when they send the term sheet out. So, and then there's like, instead of prepayment penalty, there's a thing called yield maintenance. So if you get a loan and it has yield maintenance on it as a prepayment, it will screw you over, especially if the interest rate drops. Right? I always get them confused. Yeah, if it drops because they're losing that profit. Yield maintenance.
Yield maintenance?
Yeah, so usually you will see like if you get a loan, it's like 5% the first year, 4% the second year, 3% the third year. So we call that step down. Most of the non-recourse lenders will do yield maintenance because they want you to stay there for that 5 years or the 10 years. Because what they're doing is they're allocating that funds for that term.
They have to guarantee that return to their investors.
Investors, yep,
Or
or the
not paying
interest on that loan, but they still have to make good on that.
Good on their end, or they have to find another borrower like ASAP.
In terms of, you've mentioned like this 5-year period in your syndication, so like you have to, are you like obligated to sell? So, or
No,
what if it's not a, a good time to sell?
No, you could hold on to it. You could hold on to it. Like the 22 units that I was talking about.
Yeah.
Our plan was to refi it this year. We ended up pushing that off just because of that, because
Yeah.
getting into a higher interest rate just didn't make sense. We're still cash flowing. If we refi, yeah, we get cash out, but then the cash on cash is going to drop to maybe 3%,
Yeah.
which is not fun at that point, because now you're playing with fire at that point.
Yeah.
For the
So
22
you
units.
still have control. The limited partners are along for the ride on that one.
Well, they still get voting rights. For this is like 212 unit. We have a 7-year hold on it. That's what we told everybody. So at 7 years, if we do not want to sell because the market's crap, then we have to go back to the investors. It's kind of like a capital call. So we just sit down and we ask everybody, do you guys want to sell it or not? Let's vote. So everybody votes, and then majority at that point will win. And then most of the time, everybody understands the market, and they'll be like, yeah, let's hold off on the year. Especially for us syndicators, we'll do the homework and say, hey, here's the broker value opinion. This is what it will sell for today, but to find a buyer at that price is going to be hard because of the interest rates being high. I was just talking to, keep bringing up my partner. I was talking to him this afternoon too. There was a property in Texas that was for sale for $21 million last year. It's back on the market right now at $16 million because they can't get the price because of the interest rate. It just won't pencil out.
Yeah, a lot of stuff's dropping down.
Yep.
It's just, what are you guys seeing? I mean, I know the rates are lower on the bigger you get, but what's it like 6.5 or
Yeah,
7?
so if you're looking at anything above 10 million in loan amount, you're looking at 6.4, 6.5. On the 41 unit deal that I'm doing right now, they actually quoted me 6.4, but they took it away just last week or beginning of this week. Keep thinking it's last week, but beginning of this week because they saw the U.S. Treasury go up. So they're like, hey, we don't want to lend at 6.4. It might be higher, especially because with them, what it was, we got to close in January. And I don't think I want to wait till January because I don't want to lose the 80% depreciation.
So when you decide to go after a property and you get I'm assuming you start off with a letter of intent, do you already have the short answer is I know you didn't already have all the money you needed because you said an investor brought in $750 like on the last day of closing. But how, like, let's say you needed to raise a couple million. I think you're working on raising a couple. So that you're buying a $10 million property, let's say. So if you're going to go out and buy let's say you find a property you want to buy, you do your underwriting, it looks good, the numbers are good. You fire off a letter of intent. Or have you already set up the entity, or is it dependent on them kind of accepting that letter of intent? And then you go back and create that, and then when do you really truly start fundraising? I mean, you've probably got an investor list.
Yeah.
But and how much time do you give yourself?
So we started raising, which my partner was the other partner on the 41 units. He was yelling at me today because we started after inspection.
You wait till after inspection.
Yeah, so he kept bugging me. Contract. Yeah, we had it under contract. He kept bugging me that the day the PSA got accepted. So there's the LOI. After the LOI, which is just mine's usually a 2-pager, it just outlines what terms I'll buy this property under. Then you get the PSA, which is like a 30-pager document with the attorney involved, and there's a lot of redlining.
That's not a contract.
So the PSA is the contract.
Oh, that's the contract.
Yeah, so the LOI is just saying, hey, this is the price.
It's the terms.
Terms I want to do.
Right.
Then the PSA will actually get into details on what's going to happen, what due diligence, what all I need during due diligence. If you don't provide it in the next 48 hours, I get a free extension of 10 days because the sellers sometimes take their sweet time on getting financials.
Right.
So that's when you can drop the ball on them and say, hey, here's the PSA. I get to extend closing by 10 more
You
days.
keep dragging your feet, but you're just buying me more time.
You just buy me more time at the end of the day. So, but usually the rule of thumb is once the PSA is signed, try to start raising. It's just this year for me, like I was telling a couple of you guys that I underwrote 80 deals. I sent out maybe 20 some LOIs. I walked out of maybe about 6 PSAs after inspection. One was in KCK that I'll still remember because I had some of my investors go like, hey, what happened to this property, the 50 unit deal that you're going to buy? I was like, well, I went to inspection and they told me 90% was rehab. And when I inspected every single unit, I found out only 20% of them were. And the other 40% was half-assed, and then the rest were just not done at all. There's my cuss word.
So when you started approaching your investors, the software that you use, I've looked at a couple of those platforms, they kind of put together, I mean, obviously you got to put the data in and stuff.
Yeah.
Do you have something like that creates it, or are you just Excel and PowerPoint?
Yeah, so I usually take the screenshots off my underwriting software because it has it's called like a dashboard, which has the outline of the whole project. And then they dive deeper into the rents, the actual rents with.
Are you using ACRE?
No, mine's called Synthesis. Guys out of Pennsylvania that created it. Big time nerd.
I found another.
But yeah, so pretty much he has it to the point where you could go in there and per unit, you could put in their actual rents.
Right.
And then they'll spit out the projected.
So you screenshot those.
Screenshot the first 3 pages and I send that out to all my investors, but we call it a tear sheet. So I use Canva. I go in there and I make my little marketing material, show my 3 basic ones, which is IRR, cash on cash returns, and the equity multiplier, big bold point and pictures of the property and send it out. And that will automatically get soft commits. So we call them soft commits, and then you get the hard commits after we do a webinar. So we invite everybody that's interested, and then we kind of go over the whole deal and then do a Q&A. And then after that, we start asking for hard commitments, which is where they'll actually log into the portal and they'll say, hey, I'm going to invest $25,000, $50,000. Here's my banking info. And then we send them the wiring instructions so they can send out the wire afterwards.
Do you do the conference call kind of like a Q&A, like a podcast, or how do you?
I just use Zoom. Yeah, just get everybody on Zoom and then do it through there. The reason why I like Zoom is it's kind of like here. You ask me the question, I'll answer it. There's no hiding from it, and that's what a lot of my investors like, because like sometimes you go to the webinar and stuff. If you're just one of the audience members, you don't get to see all the questions that are being asked on the chat, and then the GPs are just answering whatever they want to answer, and you're hearing what they want you to hear.
Indeed.
So for us, we do Zoom because on Zoom you get to see everybody that's logged in. They don't hide the audience, and you get to see everybody that's logged on. The chat is a community chat, so whatever questions asked, we go one by one and answer them. So like the 41 unit deal that we're doing, we just had ours on October 10th. And literally, we sat there for another hour and a half answering questions one by one. If we miss one, we go back up and pull that one back. And we usually keep a moderator on these deals so that way we don't forget somebody that asks a question, or they can raise their hand and actually ask directly to us too. So.
Can you describe the makeup of your team when you say?
Yeah, I kicked out the rest of them. So American Capital Venture Group, I created like 2013 or 14. When I first got to Kansas City, I was like, I want to do something in real estate, so that's when I started that. I brought most of the guys into this, but then as I was doing syndications, one syndication I would have like 4 guys on it from the same, from like 22 units, for instance. I started out with 3 guys there. 212 unit, we had 7 people. We had 1 doctor. The 7 there, and then the 41 unit deal that I'm doing right now, there's only 5 of us. So like, I found out like I can't just throw everybody on here every time because they're not part of the whole portfolio. So I do have another company called Arrowhead, which is with me and my main partner, the one that's the LP we've been doing for 15 years. So Arrowhead Capital is me and him together. We did the 212 unit, 36 unit, 12 unit in Westport, and then the 22 units with him as well.
So what are the skills on these different teams if you want to go through and say, this guy's an accountant, this guy's a marketing person? I mean, do you have kind of like a breakdown?
Yeah, we don't outline it to the investors, but like just internally we know. So like the 41 unit that I'm doing with one of my partners right now, he's actually a bank auditor in Topeka. So when I sent him the leases, he'll do the lease audit and figure out the discrepancies between the leases and the rent roll, which a lot of times sellers will, make that rent roll look so nice, and then you start looking at the actual leases and you're like, oh crap. So for instance, the 36 unit that I bought in KCK, this is a funny one. I haven't told you about this one. So the guy passed away. The owner passed away. He lived on site for 30 years, never got married, no kids. He said he told his sisters this, that if he ever got married, the wife and the kids would run off with his money anyways, and they'd give a crap about him. So he never got married. The sisters sold the property and they told us that, they're getting $800 rents. I get my guy on it. He's sitting there, $395, $495, $450, utilities included.
Whoa.
So the price went from 3.6 million to 1.9.
Yes.
So just him alone, he saved us over $1 million on that purchase price.
So you just went back and renegotiated?
Renegotiated, yeah. And the sisters, then it was a cashed out property, whatever they get, they're going to get. So at the end, they agreed at 1.9, which was a steal for me because I already knew I could go in there and raise rents. It's KCK, it's literally 2 miles from the 22 units.
But I think I just heard you say, correct me if I'm wrong, when it comes to your syndications, is it deal by deal? It's deal by deal in terms of who's the chief, the general partner?
General partners, yeah. So,
it's not always the same people.
Yeah, so out of the 3 that I told you guys, there's another one that's called deal sourcing. So deal sourcing is like me, let's say I hooked up with Daniel. Daniel has this nice off-market property in Topeka that he's trying to offload right now.
Oh yeah.
So me and Daniel come to an agreement. Okay, so I go ahead and sign the contract, but then I start building my team to syndicate that deal. So each project is always going to be separate, unless like so. For instance, the underwriting tool that I bought, this is called Sharpline Equity. They've been doing it for 15 years. So they are a team of 4, and they do everything in all like literally everything. If one finds a deal, they all 4 doing it together. Where for me, it's like maybe, for instance, like Samir, and then I call him Pete. So let's say Pete doesn't want to do the Topeka deal, so I'm only going to do it with Samir then at the end of the day. So the GPs in this deal might be different, completely different than the 212 unit deal. So it's always nice to kind of create your own brand. So mine's American Capital Venture Group. So you can see if you, are you okay with
Yeah, go. You can run it. Yeah.
So for me, like I have my own portal.
There you go. You guys didn't even think you're gonna get this. We're getting the inside, behind the scenes.
I don't remember my login. Just letting you know, because it's like 20 characters. These guys are very secure, but this is what it'll take you to. This is our portal. So once you create your login, then it shows you all of our offerings that we've had, past and current ones. So it's kind of like a marketplace. So you can just, if you know me, I'll send you this website. I'll be like, hey, log in and check out what I'm doing. And then at the top, it'll actually, certain users can see it. It shows you how much I've raised, how much we've distributed, and what the average cash return was. So it's like my own portfolio. So it's kind of like building credibility on what I'm doing at the end of it.
Talk about the phase of like the contract. Like once you get a contract on a property, I mean, you literally own it, right? I mean, but you're going back and beating them up on price. So how do you do that without, walking? It sounds like that's the way to do it. Like it doesn't matter what the price is now. Really what matters is after we get done beating you up, what we're going to pay at the end of the day. So how do you keep control of that process and keep getting them to go down on price? Like what are some of the tricks?
So for me to get into a deal, that LOI I send is going to be the absolute worst price I'm going to pay, and it's going to work out for me underwriting wise. So like for instance, the 41 unit deal, 4.1 was the purchase price that we agreed on. So I know at 4.1, the numbers are going to work, the returns are going to be great. I'm going to do this deal. After inspections, I went to him and I was like, hey, 3.9. And he's like, no, 4 million. I was like, all right, 4 million. Now I'm waiting on the appraisal. So if the appraisal goes back a little bit lower, I'll get to negotiate that with him. So everything that I could negotiate down is just a bonus. Some of the syndicators will use that towards their equity. So that's another thing you gotta watch out for. So like, let's say for 4.1 is the purchase price, but let's say I get $200,000 knocked off the purchase price. The investors still think they're buying it at 4.1. That 200,000 becomes the equity for the GPs in the deal. And then they split it amongst themselves as the part of their equity, which I think is frowned upon, but I like to share the wealth at the end of the day. So I give it back to my investors. For instance, like the 36 unit deal, when they dropped that price from the 3.6 down to 1.9, we're actually at 2.2, and then they dropped off another 300,000. That 300,000, we distributed it amongst all the partners in the deal.
So on that, it's no different than buying a single family property. You get it under contract, you have the property inspected, and you go back, oh no, man, we need new AC, new furnace, new wiring, whatever it is, how about $40,000 less?
Yep. Same way, just with another zero on the back of it. Yeah.
Let's do a deal, we need to get this done.
Yep.
The next one is, because I'm at it from a different perspective than you. I mean, I have properties, but I also work on them, because I get contacted by bigger companies all the time. Are you having an issue with getting the maintenance people to keep up with your properties? Because across the market, the kids don't know about it, how to put it in an air conditioner. They don't know how to put it in a thermostat. I mean, everybody wants to be a programmer.
I learned the hard way too. I didn't know.
Are you getting, but you don't want to do it. You don't want to be in there putting all the thermostats in. So tell me about managing a 200 door property. Are you getting 30 people to get in there and keep this thing managed?
So the way I explain it to everybody is I used a third-party manager when we bought the 200 units. That was an agreement that we all came to as GPs, that it's too big to manage by ourselves. So get a third-party manager, let them run the show while we stabilize everything else. In the meantime, we're running these test subjects at the 22 units, my 36 units, by hiring people on and creating our own kind of like a mini property management company. And then what I did was I went headhunting for maintenance guys. So I'll go to other apartment complexes and see who's working out there and be like, hey, how much are you getting paid an hour here?
I like it.
Yep.
Scalper. Okay. And is
Or when I'm buying the property, for instance, like that maintenance guy that I inherited at the 212 unit, while we were walking the property during inspection, I was like, hey, you're walking this with us. You know this thing is selling. What's your plans after this? Oh, I don't know. I'm looking for a job. Well, let's talk. Let's go for coffee. Let me take you out for dinner.
Yeah, so they're
I
getting
just stay
paid
on board,
19
yeah.
an hour, now you're offering them 30, and now they're making things work.
Yep.
All right, that, I like it, okay.
And you know, like there was another, like that 212 unit, they had 3 maintenance guys on staff, and then their son-in-law was the head maintenance guy. It was a family-owned operation in Platte City. So the 2 other guys, they wanted to stay on board too, but we noticed their work ethic, so we kind of just, yeah, we don't need you guys. But the one guy that was like a superstar, we made sure that he stayed on board. During inspections, you just kind of keep an eye
Great
on that.
observation. I
Yeah,
like it.
even the Class A 50 unit that we bought on Troost, the property manager rejected my offer because the owner told her that she's gonna move into their other property that they own. And then literally the day of closing, they told her that, hey, we don't need you anymore. So she called me and I interviewed her at another meetup, Alex Shang's meetup up at T-Shots. And I told her, I was like, you didn't accept my offer the first time, so I like loyalty. So I was like, you can come and work for me, but it's gonna be for $10,000 less a year. You prove your loyalty and I'll give that to you back as a bonus at the end of the year. And she's one of my best property managers right now. So.
You have the benefit of seeing single family and multifamily. I've always been in residential, so tell me, like, in terms of appreciation, equity, cash flow, is how much better is multifamily than
Multifamily, so I always take the multifamily and compare to the hotel side, so the NOI. So in multifamily, the more you increase your NOI, the more appreciation on the prices when you exit. Where like the hotels, like I learned, your NOI could be 300,000, but then they pay you on the gross revenue. Where multifamily is on, it's like literally almost 10 times the NOI is what your property value is bumped up by. So single family, the appreciation is what, maybe 5,000-6,000, a little bit more after COVID, but you know, before it was like maybe 2,000-3,000 a year. Your property tax stays stable. Multifamily, the day you buy the property, your property tax is already going up almost double because that guy probably owned it for like 15 years and his valuation was made like the 212 units. They're paying, I think, $75,000 a year. And I just got hit with the tax bill right now. It's like close to 220. I was like, holy shit. Yeah, it's just.
So it appreciates
Quite a bit, yeah, significantly over the years. The main thing is just the NOI. How do you cut costs and increase that NOI or raise rents and increase that NOI?
But the cash flow is better for multifamily.
Multifamily, yeah. And like what we were talking about earlier, like, you know, the single family is just, you have that one vacant house and now you're screwed because it's not occupied and you're paying that mortgage of $1,200 or $1,300 a month, so.
Okay, so since the state does that to you, how, you have to rent, you have to raise the rent, so typically what percentage-wise do you have to raise the rents? And how do you deal with tenants that as you go through and you're ghosting the place that you want to keep? Because you know it takes time and money to get new people in there. So tell me about that.
Yes, there's different methods. So the method I like using is, I'll go back to the 36 unit trade because we bought that at 1.9. The dude owned it for 20, 30 years almost. So I knew the property tax was going to increase, but with that, we found out that the leases, it was like $395 with utilities included. I was like, holy crap, I'm losing money instead of making money here.
Yeah.
So what I did was, we had 3 buildings, and inside the 3 buildings, there was 2 stacks. So I literally went stack by stack. Whoever was month to month, a rent increase of $250. If they didn't want to do that, they could sign a lease with a $150 increase, but they're paying the utilities on their own. I'm not paying them. That locks them in for a year, but most likely they'll leave. So out of the 1 stack, out of the 6 units, if 1 leaves, that just gives me a chance to turn that unit and rent it out for a lot more. So what happened at the 36 units, similar to 22 units, I had a tenant that was paying $465 or $475, something like that. It was a 2-bedroom unit. I renovated it, took one of the walls out of the kitchen, turned it into a half wall, threw a butcher block on there, made it look like a nice little house with a balcony. They paid $1,300 for the new tenant, $1,300 for rent. So no questions asked. She was there, she filled out the application on the spot, and then we approved her the next day and she moved in a week later, so.
Wow.
My partner goes like, God dang it, you're doing it here too now. I was like, yes. So he's like, when are we kicking out the next group of 6? And I was like, next month. So what I do is I stagger month by month. So it'll take me a whole year to kind of get the whole 36 to where I want it to be. And the reason I was being more conservative there is just because of the way the market's going right now. I don't want to have too many vacant units either. Lenders still look at that as like, they frown upon it. They're like, how are you gonna make money? But they don't understand that, hey, I need to kick out these $400, $500 tenants to get that $1,300, $1,200 that I put on the pro forma at the end of the day.
How much time do you spend doing your day job, like your insurance businesses?
And that's why I've been trying to sell it, or trying to sell it twice. Insurance, I've kind of systems and processes, right? So I have agents that I've hired underneath me. So I send all my referral to them. They do all the quoting. I kind of step back. I love the quoting part, but as I got into the real estate side, I just knew if I can't be of service to that client, I'd rather pay somebody else to take care of that. So I have 3 agents right now, 2 CSR, well, 1 CSR, I just fired one. I call insurance agency as my W-2 job. And a lot of syndicators, they came from a W-2 job and let that go after they get to a certain amount of doors or cash flow. So I think I've kind of getting there to where I can let go of my insurance agency, but kind of like what we're talking about, because you're in the insurance field as well. The cash flow is just there that I can't just let it go. I had a guy that offered me a nice little buyout price, and so I told him if he's serious, he needs to come to Kansas City and bring a checkbook with him. So I might get rid of my W-2 income. It'll be pretty tough to do, but because everybody knows me as insurance, so it's kind of hard to get away from it. I do have a construction company, which I mainly now focus just on the multifamily. I don't do any third-party jobs anymore. And then I'm looking to get into new construction as well now. So that's going to be, if I sell the insurance agency, the new construction is going to pretty much, I'm going to speed up that process instead of waiting 6-7 months.